morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to Breaking Points, a little lady show for you.
Yeah, surprise. It was we were ambushed by doing a lady show, and we're happy to do it.
Yes, indeed. We're always ready to step up with the lady show, and there is a lot of news to get to this morning. We got a China trade war. We got the government still shut down. We got ICE gone wild in Chicago and elsewhere. We've got Trump in Israel, and we're gonna bring you some saucies, just speaking like right now as we're recording this. So we're gonna process that, bring you all of the news with regard to there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. We're going to try to get to this story about whether or not there's going to be a Qatari airbase on U.S. soil, something Laura Loomer was very unhappy about. So that's an interesting one.
It is just an interesting story in general. Like, what is actually happening? Pete Hegseth himself had to issue a clarification. So we're going to break down actually the real story when we get to that block.
Yeah, Hegseth said very clearly they're going to have an airbase. And then they're like, fake news, they're not going to have an airbase. The media is lying to you. And we're like, we're just literally trying to listen to what the Secretary of War is telling us here.
Yes, but thank you for using his preferred, I was going to say pronoun, but preferred.
It does feel a little
he
like
identifies
that, though,
as
actually.
the Secretary of War.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And then we have to get in this block about Peter Thiel and his views on the Antichrist. I mean, this is an incredibly powerful, influential man because of his wealth, because of his involvement with a variety of companies, because of his connection to the Trump administration. So when he's saying wild things, you kind of have to listen. And Washington Post got their hands on the audio of these 4 lectures, private lectures that he gave on the subject of the Antichrist. We also pulled some clips of things that he said publicly before, so we're going to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Krystal, but let's start with China.
Yeah, indeed. So a whole lot of things happened with regard to this on Friday, and the markets really tanked in reaction. So China announced export restrictions, so blocking us aggressively from these rare earth minerals, which are really critical, which could have a major impact. Trump then responded, saying he was going to increase tariffs on China to 100% and impose additional restrictions on them as well. As I said, the markets tanked. There was a big reaction. Now we've got Trump kind of walking it back. So that's where we are this morning. Let's take a listen to J.D. Vance yesterday sounding off on this.
I'll be honest with you, Maria, it's going to be a delicate dance. And a lot of it is going to depend on how the Chinese respond. If they respond in a highly aggressive manner, I guarantee you the President of the United States has far more cards than the People's Republic of China. If, however, they're willing to be reasonable, then Donald Trump is always willing to be a reasonable negotiator. We're going to find out a lot in the weeks to come about whether China wants to start a trade war with us or whether they actually want to be reasonable. I hope they choose the path of reason. The President of the United States is going to defend America regardless.
So let me go ahead and put the Trump truth up on the screen where he initially announced his retaliatory actions. And to be clear, the Chinese are saying they were acting in retaliation to us changing some of the rules on our chips export restrictions. So they felt that we had violated a sort of verbal agreement that we had with them to just hold everything in place while a larger deal was being worked out. That's why they upped their export controls on us. This is Trump announcing retaliation in response to that retaliation. So he says, it's just been learned China's taken an extraordinarily aggressive position on trade in sending an extremely hostile letter to the world, stating they were going to, effective November 1st, impose large-scale export controls on virtually every product they make, and some not even made by them. This affects all countries without exception, was obviously a plan devised by them years ago, absolutely unheard of in international trade, a moral disgrace in dealing with other nations, based on the fact China has taken this unprecedented position, speaking only for the USA, not other nations who are similarly threatened. Starting November 1st or sooner, depending, the US of A will impose a tariff of 100% on China over and above any tariff they are currently paying. Also on November 1st, we will impose export controls on any and all critical software. Possible to believe China would have taken such an action, but they have, and the rest is history. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And put A3 up on the screen that shows the extent of the stock market crash that we saw on Friday. Now, as of this morning, right now, it is 8:09 a.m., so markets are not open, but futures, Emily, are up because Trump put out another truth saying that, you know, it would all work out and it'd be okay.
Yeah, the CNBC headline right now. Dow futures jumped 300 points after Trump says China's situation, quote, will all be fine. Everything's okay. He's got it completely under control. Krystal, there's no need to worry about it. He did say on Air Force One en route to Israel and Egypt that November 1st to him is, a long time away. Other people say it's really close, but for him, he says it's a long time away, projecting some confidence that he has China coming to the table on all of this. It's true. I mean, part of the Truth Social, or actually, I'm sorry, this was part of what J.D. Vance says. It is true that it's not like we have zero leverage in the situation. So there are all kinds of things that can happen between now and then, but I don't know that I'm just, listen, I don't sell stocks, but Trump saying, quote, everything will be fine, it's not exactly the confidence boost.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing kind of fits a pattern of what he's done in the past. In particular, some sort of something happening on Friday, some tariffs announced, markets reacting.
But they're closed over the weekend.
Over the weekend, they're closed. And then lo and behold, before Monday comes around, he makes some other comment that makes people go, oh, okay, I'm sure everything will be fine then. And, the backdrop of this, of course, as we've been covering here, is that we likely have this gigantic AI bubble. The all but 0.1% of our GDP growth has come from investment in AI and AI data centers. 80% of the growth in the stock market comes from these AI related companies. So we're really betting the farm on this thing. And yet, you've got all kinds of other economic indicators that for average people are going very poorly. The stock market just continues to go up and up and up because of that bet on AI. And if we could put A7 up on the screen here in terms of how to think about this war between the US and China with regard to trade. This is Arnaud Bertrand, who wrote about, okay, why is it that China is taking these actions now? We've long known about this, what he describes as the rare earth card, which they have very strategically, been able to secure the ability, not just the access to rare earth minerals, but the ability to refine them. They're really critical in all these technologies of the future. So why haven't they really played this card before? And he says that one of the answers is actually helium. He looked into the fact that, helium isn't, he says, just a party balloon gas. There's plenty of industrial applications for things like quantum computing, rocket technology, MRI machines, coolant for chip lithography equipment, et cetera. And so they realized that they had a problem in terms of their own helium access. And so over years, they've made sure that they were able to diversify their access to helium, which is critical in a variety of things. And now they're at a point where 95% of the helium that they use comes from sources other than the US. So now they're in a position where they can play this, what he describes as the rare earth card. He says, that's what most people don't realize. Power is not about intentions or rhetoric. It's about what you can actually do. Many wonder why countries almost never retaliate when the US imposes sanctions or export controls. The answer is simple. They can't. They lack the alternatives, the technologies, supply chains. China is the first country that systematically worked to eliminate every single pressure point with humongous efforts. It's not just helium. It's chips, energy, telecom, pharmaceuticals, etc. That's why the rare earth card can finally be played now, not because China suddenly became aggressive, but because they have developed the capabilities to say no. And Emily, I think this is such an incredible contrast between the Chinese system and the American system. So even putting, Trump aside, first of all, in the American system, we tend to like to outsource to the markets. If the markets don't think that if they can obtain helium or rare earths in a cheaper way that doesn't secure the supply line here
from
domestically, from China specifically, then that's what will happen.
Yeah.
And there's been very little over the past 30, 40 years, thoughtful industrial policy about, okay, these are things that are critical to our national security. These are the technologies that are going to be critical to the future. What can we do to create a system where we are investing in those and make sure that we are leading in those? And then you couple that with, under the Trump administration, they have some impulses in that direction, but they're also a bunch of fools and idiots who don't think 3 steps ahead. So they don't even think half a step ahead. I mean, the rare earth mineral thing is such an obvious problem for us, and yet Trump just barrels ahead full speed, putting random tariffs on this country and that country and on China and these very aggressive postures that make us incredibly vulnerable in a way that was very, very predictable and very obvious.
And Chinese politics don't center around the immediate news cycle. I mean, their politics is engineered over 100, 200-year cycles. And Donald Trump very much negotiates as though everything is this back and forth in a micro sense. He's more macro than other presidents, but he's micro in his negotiations and that it's about the personal moment, the last time he spoke to Xi, or the last communication that happened between the United States and China. And what gets lost in all of that, and this is actually the point I was trying to make earlier about the stocks, it's that, do I think that Trump might do a taco in this situation? Yeah, of course I think Trump might do a taco in this situation. What does that do to us, though, in the long term? Does that solve any long-term problem, or is it a stopgap for Donald Trump to have this macro sense look like he's making progress on the industrial policy, but actually what he did was solve a micro problem that you could argue he created by getting into this situation without a massive sort of long-term industrial policy in place. So, yeah, I mean, it's bleak. I think it's probably waking up. I mean, it's partially to your point. It's like we have the kind of worst of both worlds situation right now, where we don't have a super smart targeted government industrial policy on rare earths, but we do have our predatory capitalists who will try to quickly make a buck off of this when they realized that Trump wants to see them doing it, and that they probably have a lot of financial disincentives to decouple from China. But there are actually people in Trump's own administration that don't want a financial decoupling with China. This is the war inside the Trump administration right now, too. So basically, nobody has any idea in the big picture sense, what a clear, organized policy is going to look like. We don't have anything on the table right now.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, zooming out a bit, it shows kind of the promise and the peril of a more planned economy.
Yeah.
Because the Chinese are executing this extremely well. The amount, when you look at the number of people who've been lifted out of poverty over the past number of decades, overwhelmingly, that is because of growth in China. The number of their rapid economic growth and the number of their own people that they've been able to lift out of poverty is truly one of the great economic miracles in history.
And not in any small part by persuading us to trade with them more and more.
Yeah.
That was a big part of it.
They looked at, first of all, they rejected the path that we, pushed on the former Soviet Union of this neoliberal shock doctrine. Saw that did not go well, and explicitly rejected that path, and understood the global international system well enough to basically sort of use it and for their own ends, right? To exploit the loopholes in it, to use it for their own ends, and have had this incredibly intelligent strategic policy plans. And not to say that everything is rosy and it's all perfect and they don't have their own economic challenges to deal with. That is certainly the case. But we can see, the way that their solar energy and renewable energy is coming online. We can see the way that their EV industry has developed and is way more advanced at this point than ours is. We can see the way that they are, at least even with us in terms of AI development. All of these areas that we used to feel like, oh, well, they can just copy our tech after we put it out there, so we're always at the bleeding edge. That is no longer the case in terms of China. So they've been able to accomplish something that is extraordinary because it's been driven by the top, and it also has been extremely intelligent. And then with the Trump administration, you do have this impulse towards more of, top-down government control, but it's done in this totally haphazard way with no forethought and no long-term planning. I mean, part of that is just the nature of the American system, where you get in office for 4 years and then you're tossed down again. But it also is because, they have gone about this in such a, slapshot manner, just thinking back to that original tariff announcement with all the, countries listed, and some of it didn't make sense and incorrect, and tariffing islands that only have penguins on it or whatever. The polar opposite of the intelligent, strategic, thought out direction that you would want to go. And meanwhile, they're actively kneecapping the industries of the future. I mean, they don't have, typically Republicans have said they have an all of the above energy strategy. They are actively hostile towards renewable energy, while China is, racing ahead in that field. So I think it's an incredible contrast between the, the approaches of the two countries, and the perils not only of neoliberalism, but a stupidly done planning from the top.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people who push the renewables have made it hard to mine rare earths in places like Alaska. There's some of that going on. At the same time, it's the strongest critique of industrial policy is that it becomes crony capitalism, and that crony capitalism not only is immoral, but it's also inefficient. And when Trump was pitching this industrial policy, planning Liberation Day, nobody knew exactly what it would look like. The warning from the boomer cons and neolibs was industrial policy is crony, industrial policy just becomes inefficient. It's crony capitalist, it's inefficient. And then all of the industrial policy people like Sagar and me are like, well, there's a way that this can be done that actually makes a lot of sense. And then Trump just like has completely explicitly shown it's basically crony capitalism. Like he has a system of crony capitalism that we haven't seen fully in fruition because he's still going back and forth on a lot of the stuff, like the China stuff right now. Like it's happening right now. And Liberation Day was April. So we don't know exactly what the legacy of the Trump tariff policy is going to look like because we have no idea day to day where he lands with individual countries, including massive ones like China. Is he going to capitulate in ways that make no sense for the United States? Is he going to crack down on a way that's hawkish and puts us in? We genuinely do not know because so much of it depends on who he talks to last, what kind of deal they're making. I mean, it's actually like the AI announcement early in his presidency where he had Sam Altman behind, like, inconceivable a year ago during his campaign, or let's say a year and a half ago during the campaign, that he would be giving so much away to people who were brutally opposed to him in many ways for years. And there he was. So it's all haphazard. It's all completely haphazard.
To your crony capitalism point, it very much appears that there was somebody who made millions and millions of dollars insider trading on crypto in particular. People are tracking these wallets that, were trading just before this 100% tariff announcement was made. Par for the course for this administration. Not shocking. It's barely even worth a mention because that's just the crony capitalist nature of this administration. He is validating some of the criticisms of libertarians. That is truly unforgivable. So we can never forgive him for that, Emily.
Thing. But it's not as though, I mean, like everyone knows that can happen and that can go wrong, right? Like everyone knows that. But Trump is, especially more in his first term, but in his second term, he's just been surrounded by the business community. He enjoys so much having industry kiss the ring. And they weren't doing it at all in his first term. So he wasn't even in a position to make deals with these guys.
And it's a way for him, he loves power. Like, and that's a way for, there's nothing he loves more than, people showing up, Tim Cook showing up at the White House with a gold bar for him and, or Mark Zuckerberg being like, oh, sir, did I say the right dollar amount that you wanted me to say in terms of our investment in the U.S. and being able to have that direct line and really consolidate this, system of oligarchs who surround him. Meanwhile, excuse me, very relevant to this, you can put A8 up on the screen. This is what I was referring to before. I mean, so much of our economy is literally just AI. Without data centers, GDP growth was 0.1% in the first half of 2025.
Good Lord.
Financial Times had a great headline that was something like, the U.S. is now just one big bet on AI.
Yep.
And that is increasingly the case. This will become relevant again in our final block on Peter Thiel and the Antichrist, because his whole theory is that anyone who opposes this is actually like either the Antichrist or like in league with the Antichrist.
But he's also like conceding it's a bet, it's a gamble.
Yeah, he says it's dangerous, but it's more dangerous to not do it. That's his position. Yeah. So that's where we are, and we can take a look at 810. Just U.S. dollar, it continues to decline precipitously this year. All sorts of troubling economic indicators, and the U.S. dollar piece, and also Sagar and I covered last week the extraordinary rise of gold is an incredibly significant development because effectively what the world is saying is U.S. dollar, U.S. treasuries, you guys are no longer the safe haven. We are going to gold. We're going to hard metals. We're going to find somewhere else that is, a place to hedge our bets against this massive, likely AI bubble that we can see inflating. So that is why that is very significant.
Yep. And I mean, I'm on CNBC again right here. Retaliation or escalation, this is the headline. Trust between the U.S. and China is fading fast, analysts say. The root cause of the tension is due to a lack of mutual trust. This is what we were getting at before, Krystal. It's like utterly unpredictable because, like I made the argument early after Liberation Day that the unpredictability was leveraged to an extent, and I think that would have been true. But now the unpredictability has people betting very clearly in the long term. A lot of these bets are being placed with countries outside of the United States, with supply chains outside of the United States. Not all of them, but a lot of them are enough that it should actually be genuinely concerning for us because this lack of, quote, mutual trust, well, it's not just between the United States and China. It's between our other trading partners in the United States.
Yeah, that's right.
And they have to trust the relationship between the United States and China. They have to trust what the policy looks like is clear in one direction or the other. And really just like even at this point, how many months since April is people don't know, and people have to make money. They have to make business decisions, and here we are.
Yeah, we're gonna keep our eye on all of this.
Which is why gold, by the way.
Going up and up. Yeah, and we're gonna continue to keep our eye on all of this, including the AI piece of this, because I really feel it is an undercovered, like bubbling populist issue, both from the standpoint of, you know, where these data centers are being located and some of the battles with locals who don't want them there or after they're there are very upset about the fallout from that. And then the spiking electricity prices, which is just, you know, that is like surest way to get some sort of a populist backlash is if you make it more and more expensive for people just to be able to like have the basics of living their lives.
And, you know, maybe it's possible that 6 months from now, Trump has worked out some type of like massive deal with China and things are clearer and make more sense. But right now, it doesn't look like that's where this is going. Like, I get it. I get why, you know, Trump allies, Trump supporters would say just like trust the process. But for people outside of Trump circles, nobody trusts the process right now, especially not. We're going to show the clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene on Tim Dillon as people's livelihoods are being like directly and obviously affected in material ways. So
yeah, she's a bit of a canary in the coal mine, I'd say.
Yeah, the extent to which people are willing to, quote, trust the process at this point is obviously, I mean, even people who were like Trump curious independents, they're going to have a serious problem unless there's, again, to your point, Krystal, a clear concrete industrial policy, deal with China, deal with other major trading partners that is coherent and makes sense. That's going to be really difficult for them to sell heading into the midterms unless that changes.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.